Hey guys, Ken here from the Retro Toy Escapades channel in Malaysia. Over the past week, there's been news updates circulating that the long unavailable MOTU Origins Wave 3 has now been relisted on Big Bad Toy Store for pre-order once again. This series was released all the way back in 2020, alright, back in the good old days when you could get a fresh wave of Masters of the Universe figures that were entirely comprised of all new figures. No repaints, no variants, nothing like that, alright? Just new figures, okay? 4 figures in a carton, 4 freaking new figures, alright? And this is the wave that consisted of She-Ra, so far the only version of She-Ra that's appeared in the line to date. The less interesting version of MER-MAN, okay? Zodac, to me, a character that's got a great backstory, an incredible concept, but just a boring execution as an action figure, alright? It's just nothing that you can really do with the toy. He just stands there and he holds a gun. Okay, and of course, Roboto, all right, the absolute standout of the wave. Roboto, essentially the Heroic Warriors version of Trapjaw, all right, because it comes with all these interchangeable parts. The toy, the Origins version of him, replicated all of this from the vintage version. So yeah, Roboto's the absolute standout of this wave. Now, I did reviews on the channel for the entire wave back in March of last year. Do check them out if you haven't already. I'll put the links up in the description. The thing is, this is the wave that was out of circulation for so long. It's just surprising to see it now turning up with stocks available for pre-order. This batch of figures was the last wave to be released exclusively through Walmart in the US. Alright, so some of you might remember that when Origins first came out sometime in September of 2020, that's when it was released here in Malaysia. I guess it coincided with the rest of the world too. At the time, it was stated that for the US, these figures would be available only through Walmart, all right, through Walmart stores for those first few months of release. Okay, now, I've never been to a Walmart store before. I mean, I assume it must be a really incredible place, but right here in Malaysia, I always see these listings online for Walmart exclusives. Okay, everything's like, exclusively available at Walmart or Target, and I have to get this stuff sometimes through eBay, all right, pay a bomb for shipping, but something like Masters of the Universe, it was perplexing, all right, that it would be released as an exclusive. Okay, but I assume that Walmart stores in the US must have a huge distribution chain, okay, to be able to accommodate something like this. But I think that this contributed to the scarcity as well of those initial few waves that came out, all right? That's why people are just hunting for them, all right, like everywhere. And I'm not sure how the distribution was for the rest of the world when it came to these first few waves of figures. Maybe you guys can let me know in the comments. But for Malaysia, these waves were exclusives as well, all right? Just that they were Toys R Us exclusives. Okay, Toys R Us still obviously a big thing here in Asia, still representing right here in Malaysia. So Toys R Us was the official retailer for Masters of the Universe product, all the way from something like September of 2020 through January of 2021, something like that. Okay, so Toys R Us stores then started doing something that they never did before here in Malaysia. They started to do pre-orders themselves. And this is just something that we've never seen before from like a major retailer, all right? And the weird thing was, they already had the stocks in hand, okay? But they still open up a pre-order, I guess, to estimate demand. Because you know this, all right? You know this because after your order went through, if you were lucky enough to get your order through, you'd receive the items in like within a week or so. Which just means that, it's at the warehouse right here, okay? The thing was in hand, and they were still opening up pre-orders rather than just opening them up for sale directly on the site or even having them up on display at the shelves. And the pre-orders were actually kind of strange, maybe even revolutionary, because what they do is that they would split up the waves, all right? So they started doing this with Wave 2, and Wave 2 was the wave that consisted of Skaglo, Orko, Trapjaw, and Many Faces, all right? A highly desirable wave even until today. And the thing is that you couldn't just pre-order those 4 figures directly. You'd have to get them in an assortment where it consisted of either Skaglo and Orko or Trapjaw and Many Faces, and they would pair them up with He-Man and Skeletor. So that was the first indication that we got at the time that apparently there were excess stocks of He-Man and Skeletor figures. Well, of course, now we know a lot better. But back then, people were still hunting down figures for both He-Man and Skeletor, especially people who just only wanted those two figures in their collections. They were not interested in any of the other figures in the entire universe. So, I mean, this is a good way to actually, in a way, have the stocks go out, all right, and make sure that people still had He-Man and Skeletor, and also give them an incentive to purchase the other two new figures. So they started doing this with Wave 2, and the other thing about the pre-orders that was kind of strange is that they would only open up the pre-orders like after midnight, midnight our time. And probably it's something common with pre-orders, but there will be no announcement or pre-warning that this was going to be happening. The listing would just turn up on the website, all right? And then what you have is that situation where fans in the community will be sharing the listings on things like Facebook, on social media, and everybody would just storm the Toys R Us website and try to get their orders in as soon as possible. Now, this happened for maybe the first few times before we figured out that this is something that's going to be a regular thing, at least for a while. So what you have will be situations where people will be stalking the website, just after midnight, all right, just waiting to see if anything would drop. Now, the thing is that when the listings will go out for pre-order, they will be up there for about maybe half an hour or so, and then it will be listed as no longer available. So it led us to wonder, were the stocks really that limited? Or did they in fact have more, but they were saving it for other occasions? Because sometimes the pre-order will be taken down, and then it will be back up again, maybe a day or two later. And then again, similarly, after about half an hour, it will be listed as unavailable. So I would say that when it came to those early waves, especially that wave 2, all right, the wave with that freaking awesome Trapjaw figure and the Skaglow, it was an intensely nerve-wracking, suspenseful time trying to be able to get your hands on them. And you really need a network of people, friends, all right, to be helping you to obtain these things. And it's collecting is not a solo game, all right. You need strength in numbers. And then you'd have situations when there would be a new store opening, like a new Toys R Us outlet would open. And this did happen. There was a new store opening sometime, I think in November or December of 2020. There was a brand new store opening for Toys R Us, and it was located someplace kind of out of the city limits. But the thing is, this particular store, they had the new wave of Masters of the Universe figures out there on the shelves on opening day. Of course, it barely lasted past that opening day. But the fact of the matter is they were able to open that new store, and they were able to have the new figures up there on the shelves. All right, so I've put up some of the images here dating back to 2020 from that store opening display, where you can see that figures like Many Faces and Trapjaw were actually up there on the shelves. So it just makes you wonder, if there were stocks available to be put up on shelves, why even bother with the pre-order? Was it something that was designed to create more hype, all right, to drive more interest and demand? Is there somebody controlling the stocks out there? I mean, there's so much mystique around the distribution mechanics for these few early waves that until today, I think that it still remains a mystery until this point right now, all right? But then we find that Big Bad Toy Store has in fact relisted the availability for something like Wave 3. Now, when it came to MOTU Origins Wave 3, Toys R Us Malaysia had this up for pre-order sometime in late November of 2020, and they were actually able to fulfill their orders by early December of 2020, all right? Because we ordered it through the website, and we got it in hand less than probably about 2 weeks later. So this was a wave that they actually had the whole assortment listed just as is, all right? All 4 figures were listed as is, and they didn't try to break up the assortment or anything like that. So this was a great step forward. We got the figures that we wanted, and the thing is, when it came to this particular pre-order, one thing that I noticed is that it was actually up on the site for quite some time, all right? You could go into the Toys R Us Malaysia website and still place an order for it, a month or so, even after the original listing went up. So that got me wondering if maybe there was a surplus of stocks this time around. Okay, and a lot of people, all right, especially a lot of collectors here in Malaysia, were able to get their hands on this set. And what I began to see after about like a month or 2 months later is that a lot of people were actually offloading their sets online. They're selling them off through Facebook groups and things like that, because I think that maybe they weren't really. The general consensus was that they weren't really that satisfied with the wave. I suppose a lot of people were not really happy, I think, with how the Shira figure turned out. I saw a lot of listings for the Shira figure actually being sold locally online during that time. And probably even maybe the MER-MAN figure, definitely I think everybody would have held on to the Roboto. Okay, but yeah, Shira, MER-MAN, and Zodac were all being sort of like relisted up for sale after a while. And it began to make me wonder if the interest in the line was actually fading off. Right, it's like what happened after that also was that when we started moving into wave 4, I believe it was, the Zodac wave, the one with Ninja and stuff like that. Okay, these waves started to turn up at retail, right? Like regular retail, beyond just Toys R Us. So, I mean, you've seen some of the Toy Store Hunt videos that I've done on the channel dating back to last year, where there's just a surplus of Zodacs, Ninjas, Stratoses. I mean, it's like you can't get enough of them. They were just everywhere. And I think that was essentially the start of when Masters of the Universe figures began to clog up the shelves. Having said that, though, sometime about a month or two into 2021, I started to realize something a bit weird, though. Even though that wave 3 of figures was available through the Toys R Us website, and a couple of hobby stores locally as well did bring them in, however, I did not ever notice wave 3 or even wave 2 before that ever being stocked at retail again, right? In fact, wave 3 was never on shelves. For some reason, it was only available online. And then I think that everybody bought up whatever was available at the time, and then they started reselling within the community, those people that figured out they didn't want the figures anymore. But it was never actually at retail. And then I started to notice something else, something else that was pretty weird. Demand for wave 3. Never mind demand for wave 2. Wave 2 was always in demand. But wave 3 was the figure set that I thought was available somewhat in abundance, all right? At least, as it turns out, in this part of the world. But I began to see demand for the wave 3 figures. Shira especially, man, it's like listings for her on eBay will go up to like 100 USD, even until today, I think. And I started to wonder, hey, look, is this freaking wave actually supposed to be rare? Is it like, somehow or the other, it just ended up in some parts of the world, like here, and it just never really got distributed elsewhere? So it's come to the point where now, at this point, something like Big Bad Toy Store restocking that wave 3, all right, it's become like big news, okay, because apparently, as I've just realized, a lot of people don't actually have this particular set of figures yet. A couple of things that's interesting about the Big Bad Toy Store listings here is that all of the figures in MOTU Origins Wave 3 are listed individually. So you don't have to get them in a set. You're not locked to get them in a particular full set. You can get them one by one. You can choose the figures that you want. For instance, if you just wanted Roboto, you can just get him. And they're listed at a price of $18.99, which I would think is regular retail, probably even less than regular retail, I think, for a lot of sites. So the price that they've listed here of $18.99 is indeed an excellent price for collectors. And in fact, if I were to go right now onto eBay, if you guys were to just Google, say, MOTU Origins Shira on eBay right now, you would see listings for the figure going up to, like I said, as high as $100 US. There's one right now that I'm looking at that's like bidding up to $51. So I'm not sure if this pre-order status here on Big Bad Toy Store is a given. It's like, if you pre-ordered it right now, are you confirmed to obtain it for yourself? Are they confirming that you'll be able to actually get a figure for yourself. But I assume that's how it works, right? But the interesting thing here as well is that it says here that the figures are estimated to arrive in October of 2022. Okay, so we are now at the tail end of March. October is like all the way at the end of this year. All right, October of 2022 essentially means that it's coming out about 2 full years. Okay, these stocks are expected to be in hand 2 full years after its initial release. Okay, so it's effectively a vintage figure. All right, but I'm just wondering, how do the distribution mechanics actually work? Where are the stocks in fact coming from? And the fact that you're able to actually still pre-order them like a full week after the initial listing went up means that I suppose they're confident in their ability to be able to fulfill the orders. But where are they coming from? All right, where have these figures been all this time? All right, leave a note in the comments below, all right, if you guys have any ideas. But I will say this: if stuff like this can be restocked, then what about everything else out there? Okay, now I don't think that Mattel is necessarily reproducing these figures, okay, to fulfill the demand. No, I believe that they're not going to do that unless they're releasing them in a new color scheme or something like that. But these are, the same figures that were actually released from 2 years ago. It's just that stocks of them are somewhere out there. And if these can be restocked, then what about everything else? Is there a mystery warehouse somewhere out there, right, that has cartons full of this stuff, all right? Just like the stuff that they found, in countries where they found warehouses full of vintage toys, all that vintage Kenner sealed boxes of Mars toys, stuff like that. Are there warehouses somewhere that have this stuff in them, all right, right now? And what about Wave 2 as well, all right? Are we going to see a restock of Skaglow, Trapjaw, those guys, okay? Many Faces, Orko. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. Let me know if you guys are pre-ordering this particular batch of figures from Big Bad Toy Store, or if you already have them in hand, or maybe you had to get them online, you had to pay top dollar for them or something like that. Let me know in the comments what the experience was. I want to hear from you guys out there. Thanks again for tuning in. I'll catch you guys again real soon with more content. Take care.